you. Good to see you all. I think I know many people in the room already. Hey, Doug. This is my personal story and our personal story, how we went from 0 to $10 million in ARR in 2 years. And the reason this may be relevant for you is that, as people may not know or may know, is that we were born from cold outbound. We've always been a cold outbound shop. I was the first SDR. We're still 80% of our revenue comes from cold outbound. We hired a marketing team in about 6 months ago, and it's doing really great. But the bones of the organization come from sales development and cold outbound. Just let me get a quick survey. Who here is working in a company's sub $1 million run rate? Raise your hand. 1. Be proud. Come on. There's nothing wrong with being small. All right, nobody. $1 to $5 million in run rate. All right, and $5 to $10 million in run rate. Not that many. 10 and above $1 million in run rate. And the rest of you are what? 100 million run rate? No? How many here wants to start a company? Or have dreams of starting a company? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so this is going to be mildly relevant for half of you. So let's go with that. So let's start with start at the beginning. So the 0 to 1 million path for us was a path of necessity, meaning we had another company called Group Talent. Who here has heard of Group Talent? 1, 2, 3, maybe because you went on Unleash. But most people don't know anything about Group Talent. And that was part of the problem, is that in June 2014, we had 2 months of cash, and we needed to dig ourselves out of that hole. And the 4 of us, the 4 co-founders, are product people, and we decided that we're going to engineer our way out of it. We're going to build a tool that would allow us to sell, our 3-person sales team, to sell like a team of 20 people. So the tool consisted of 2 main things. One is the ability to personalize the first touch of an email, and the second part was the ability to follow up. So we built this out, we let it rip, and we actually did hit 20x the meetings that we had before. And that was incredible. The problem was that every single one of those meetings, we will go in, we will sit down, we will try to pitch our recruiting service, which that was Group Talent at the time. And people were like, no, that's fine, but I want to know more about your sales process. Because the way that your reps reach out to me was very good and diligent and personal, and I wanted to replicate that within my shop. And after too many of those, I realized that we actually had something inside that we needed to let out. And that was the genesis of outreach. Now, our first rep was this guy called Mark Kosoglu. Who here knows Mark? Mark knows everybody at this point. Yeah, and Mark was not only our first rep, but the way that we met Mark is because Mark was the first customer testimonial and the tout testimonial page. So I go down the list and I reach out to Mark and I tried to sell him, and I couldn't sell him because he's an Oracle, and I couldn't integrate into Oracle at the time. And Mark started coaching my calls. So I will get on a call, I will have Mark on the call, and then he will give me feedback, and that's how we develop a relationship. And eventually he said, I want to come work for you. And I told him, Mark, I don't have any money. I would love to have you, but I don't have any cash. And he said, what if I do it on a commission-only basis? Who here has worked commission-only? Yeah, not that many of you. You know why? Because it's crazy. It's super risky. So not only he came in commission-only, but he convinced 4 of his friends to join him on commission-only, to work in sales outreach, making commission-only. So yes, fantastic, right? Because I don't have any risk. But oh shit, all of a sudden I have 4 AEs and no lead sourcing. So I became the first SDR. I would prospect at night and outreach in the morning. And because I didn't have any money to buy lead sources, I don't know if how many of you know this, but all the data providers have a daily limit that expires around 10 p.m. PST. So around 7 p.m., I would call friends around who also had startups, who also were in sales development, and I would ask them how many credits do you have left? And I would buy those credits. Or I would exchange outreach for those credits. So by around 9 p.m., I would have about 200 to 500 contacts that would then break down by persona, dump in outreach, and then that will go ahead and generate meetings. Because I had to generate 4 meetings per rep, and I have 5 reps. So I had to generate 20 meetings a day, or people wouldn't eat. So that was the difference between us and the other startups, is that we were born from the fact that we had to cold outbound, we had to stick the landing for us to survive. And that's how we got to where we are. Now, what did I learn? First thing is that at the very early stages of the company, it's all about sales velocity. Sales velocity gives you two things. Gives you a lot of feedback on your product itself, gives you feedback around product market fit, but most importantly to me, it gives you feedback around being sales ready. And the difference between a product market fit, the product that has product market fit, and a sales ready product is that a sales ready product allows you to engage in a sales cycle after one conversation. Meaning I can tell you about outreach in one meeting, and you will be interested in having a second meeting and a follow-up, eventually getting to a close. If you can't do that with a product that has a product market fit, the product is not sales ready. You need to go back to the drawing board. So for us, getting a lot of that feedback in early allows us to really scale the story, the tagline, the few things that you say early in a call when you're about to talk to somebody. And that gets you to a sales ready product. The second learning is that get scrappy, right? Get leads, get contacts. We used to do swaps. And I learned that from Maria Pergolino at Aptus, that you go to a conference and then you get a bunch of names and you swap with other people. And that is super efficient. Learn quickly, optimize daily. And then just do it again. And that's what volume counts, because optimization only works in large numbers. The larger the number, the more optimization you can do. So you have to get to that number. You have to hit the numbers that you need to hit for your numbers to be relevant, statistically relevant, that is. And there's a couple things that I will encourage you to not do. A, don't go after enterprise early. I know we're in the valley and everybody wants you to go up market or side market and non-tech, blah, 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 blah. Ignore that advice. It's wrong, it's unhealthy. You need product velocity, you need at bat, period. The second thing is that don't look for big markets, don't innovate in business models, just get your product to be sales ready, period. So once you get there, you're good. And those are the metrics that matter to us. So connect and reply rates, because I was the only SDR, so if I got reply rates, that means I'm having meetings, and then meetings held rate, and then revenue run rate. Because at the end of the day, we need to get to the $1 million mark, because after $1 million, we can fundraise. So boom. We did it. Took us about 6 months. Now we are in Series A territory. I can finally pay a salary to my reps. I don't have to freak out. I'm not the only SDR anymore. Now I have money to hire SDRs. But as you all know, Mark is based in State College. And his friends are all in State College. So we decided to set up shop in State College. And State College is not a high-tech kind of place. I don't know, who here has been to State College? Or went to Penn State? There you go. Were you born there or you go to Penn State? There you go. So it's not, it's a different kind of place. So we couldn't train SDRs. So we have to manufacture them from scratch. And we hired them, and as we started to grow SDR team, we started getting uneven results. And it's mostly because we didn't know at the time, how to run a big SDR team. Mark didn't run a big SDR team. He ran a closer team. So what we did is we brought in Jacko. Who here knows Jacko? Yeah. So Jacko's a trainer. And there's two ways you can do this. You can either, do it yourself, or you can bring in a trainer. And we decided to bring in a trainer for a couple of reasons. One, we brought in Jacko around the time when he released a huge book that he released around sales development that has a Russian rocket design on the cover. It looks like a coffee table book. It's huge. So we got that book, we read it, and I was like, that's exactly what we need. And the second thing that you need to look for in an SDR trainer is that they need to understand the mentality of a millennial, because a lot of your SDRs are going to be millennials. That's neither good nor bad, it's just a fact. You're going to have a good portion of them being millennials, and they need to understand how to train them, how to motivate them, and Jacko has all that. So he did, and he focused on two things in particular. He focused on the activity itself, and this is what I learned from Jacko. He focused on the activity itself, and he focused on the quality, meaning is the activity happening? And two, is the activity impactful? Sorry, is the activity happening with quality, and then is the quality impactful? So he stressed quite a bit in terms of you set hours for doing the activity, so you open up with a social touch from 7 to 8, and then from 8 to 9 you do your calls, and then from 9 to 10 you do your email follow-ups, and then you rinse and repeat. So getting that structure in the SDR day, and then getting the playbook out in terms of what exactly that you put in the email, what exactly do you put in a LinkedIn touch, how do you open up the call. Getting those details down pat was really important as we're scaling our SDR team. Because what happens is that when you do that, and you're able to create a repeatable process, you can throw more SDRs in the mix. Without it, you're throwing bodies at the problem, and you're going to end up with a huge mess. So when I look back to those days, the main learnings from those days were that activities matter a lot, and the content of each of those activities was what the meat of the argument was. Meaning you have to make sure the activities happen, and they happen with quality, and they happen consistently. The second thing is that for the activity to actually take hold, you need to be really clear about your ICP. You need to be really, really crisp about who is your customer and who's not. Meaning you need to draw a line, kind of like Pareto efficient curve, and you need to figure out what is the most money you can make in the least amount of time. Put a circle around that, and that's your customer. So go after those. The third thing is this is the time when you actually make your investment in what Carrie called the sales stack, which is your CRM, your engagement platform. Excuse me for a minute, I'm going to get some water. Thank you. That's okay. And can you hear me? Perfect. And this is where you make your investment in your sales stack. So your CRM, your engagement platform, your data, your all the things that are going to make your reps efficient, whatever your process is. And then just get used to measuring everything. And this is where if you don't get used to measuring everything at this stage, between $1 and $5 million in ARR, this will bite you in the ass in the next set of few slides, because it did bite us in the ass. These are the things that matter to us, and this is a bit controversial. So we focus way more on the actual content of the activity than on the conversion metric. And I know that sounds weird, but when you're that small, you really need to focus on the input variables, not on the output variables. Because what you're trying to do is making sure that every SDR who shows up is fully ramped within X many weeks. That's your job, is to make sure that SDR comes in from Walmart, from selling phones, from a car lot, and then you turn him into a fully efficient, fully contributing, fully productive SDR that produces, 4 or 5 many sales per week with quality, that stick the landing, that don't churn. So it's really important that you manage the input metrics, not the output metrics. And then you sort of look at, I learned this from chat, it's activity plus competence, right? You measure the amount of activities they do. They have to hit the activity number, but they have to do with competence for revenue to show up on the other side. So now you're starting to get a feel for efficiency. And then you need to benchmark your own efficiency, meaning I love to go around and comparing numbers around, funnel conversion, but you need to understand which one is your own funnel conversion. So how many sales per SDR can you expect? Because that starts giving you a sense of the repeatability of your revenue. So boom, we make it to 5. Now we hit the next stage. Who here sells subscription services? Software as a service, platform as a service? Yeah, many of you. This is the time in which most companies sort of go astray. This is the time in which the gap between 5 and 10 is when you make the most amount of mistakes, when people sort of stall and they miss a few quarters. And the reason is that now we're feeling good, right? So we have an outbound factory. We have a team of 10 SDRs. We promoted a couple of the early SDRs to be managers. Things are good, looking good, feeling good. We're growing fast. But what happens is that as we add the additional AE, the additional SDR, we start running out of cycles, meaning we can't coach everyone the way that we used to coach them before. We can't pay attention to the activities the way we used to. Jack was going on to the next engagement, and it's just us. So, because we feel so good about what we're doing, we decided, well, all we need is it's a director of SDR, an SDR manager to come in and sort of lead us out into growth. So we go out, interview a bunch of people, bring somebody in, and now that person comes in, and the first thing he does, he throws our playbook out the window. And he said, look, it's all about personalization. It's all about making the human connection. It's all about making sure that you're targeted and you're human and you are relevant. So we're going to focus exclusively on personalization. And my SDRs are excited. They love spending time on LinkedIn. This is awesome. Who doesn't like to, accost people on LinkedIn and watch your profile, try to find them in Facebook and see what they're saying on Twitter. So they're spending all sorts of time doing all this research, right? Like they're loving it. But you know where I'm going with this. My activities fell through the floor. I lost 50% production on that move. And because my metrics were not telling me the production of the SDR shop, I was just looking at sort of like the pipeline conversion metric, which is what everybody tells you to do. I sort of missed that. So then comes the end of the quarter. And in the end of the quarter felt hard. I don't know if you guys had that before, where sort of like 30, 40% of the quarter is delivered on the last day. You know what I mean? And there's a lot of concessions you're making. There's like 10 p.m. deals that are coming in. And you're celebrating because, oh shit, we made it, right? And it's 10 p.m. and the contracts are coming in. And you're caving on terms and you're giving out shit that you shouldn't. And it's not a very happy moment. And you don't know that until you reflect the day after, until the party's over. And you're like, well, what just happened, right? And I just had a hard week after that week because like I wasn't feeling good. So I started calling, VCs. I started calling in friends. And I call a guy, Mike Maples, who runs Floodgate, and he used to run sales and marketing at a bunch of other companies. And he tells me, you're done. You're about to miss the next 2 quarters. You got some major issues. You need to go look deeply into your pipeline, find out what your activity metrics are. You need to stop everything you're doing and focus on this exclusively. So that's not an easy message to digest. So huddle the team, code red. Why was this hard? What happened? And we started looking into it. So, sure enough, everything, activity fell through the roof, which means that we have to kick it up to in very high gear on the conversion. When you kick it, when your conversion rate is high, you have to wonder what are you doing that is driving conversion abnormally high, right? Like that's also bad. And around that time, I was selling to a company called T-Mobile. You've probably all heard of it. And I really hit it off with the VP of sales. And then we sort of started engaging him in this particular problem. He came and sort of consulted with my team. And he's like, dude, your pipeline coverage is off. Meaning the ratio between gross pipeline and the number you need to hit was close to 1. Meaning not only I had to create a lot of Imperium pipe just to hit my number, but I had to convert whatever came into the pipeline, even if it wasn't a customer fit. What that did is that created something we, a year later, called SWADAM. Shit we don't do anymore. So this is all the deals that come in at the 11th hour that are super hard, that are completely bad fits, that are trying to replace some tool that has nothing to do with sales, with outreach, that they churn within 6 months. And getting this leadership in place allowed me to sort of take a step back as a CEO and see the whole picture and make sure that now we're growing profitably and we're going in the right direction. And now we're thinking not only of the deals he comes in, but we think about that, that discovery call in terms of how is that customer going to perform 2 years from now, so that I can have a healthy retention and then upsell profile over many years. And that's sort of what Matt brought to the table. So what did I learn from that period? First of all, don't be religious. And I think you heard this from Ross too. It's not about whether you can set up an inside sales team when your ACV is 2,000. The question is, how are you running your team that is making that efficient or not? So go, trust the numbers, trust the output metrics, measure everything. Like stop, reading the commentary on LinkedIn about, it's all about the calls, or it's all about the emails, or it's all about the personalization, or it's all about automation. None of that matters. Do what is right for you. Do what is right for your customer. Engage the way that your customers like to engage, and you will see results. But don't trust religion, and don't trust anybody who comes with a religious point of view to you that this is the way you should be running it. The second one is that you have to plan for misses. So right now we run our pipeline about 3.5x coverage, so that we know that even with the in-period deals, that we have plenty of elbow room for misses. Right, because you want to make sure that the deals come in at their own time. Like you don't want to accelerate the close. You don't want to be that guy who is calling that customer at 10 p.m. to get in the contract now. You're building a long-term relationship. You want to make sure that you manage that from the start. And I mean the obvious is bring somebody who knows what they're doing. Yes, you're really smart. Yes, you know people who know people. But at the end of the day, like there's so much nuance in managing a whole sales pipeline. Because it's sort of when man meets machine kind of thing. Like this is not easy. This is a time-tested. You can use a lot of experience, and it's okay to turn customers away. So don't do SWADAM, because it will bite you in the ass at some point, and it's unpleasant. And these are the things that matter to us now, or it mattered to us when we were at 10 million. Sales-accepted leads for sure, because that's a measure of the output of your SDR team, and then what is your gross pipeline. And then conversion allows me to actually manage my AEs more closely and to make sure that we're looking at the right AEs. Are we ramping them correctly? Are we enabling them right? So that way we're able to just bring people on board and make sure that they're productive over the long term. As we're going forward, these are the things that now I'm worried about, right? So I'm worried about rep onboarding. I want to make sure that is A, repeatable, and B, short. Because every day that you're hiring a rep is being non-productive actually accrues, it burns cash. So that rep is taking bites out of your cash trough and not contributing. So you need to make sure that you reduce that, but you make it with excellence. So that person, when they come out, they're really adding to the pipeline accounts that are going to convert and are going to expand over time. The metric that I measure my leadership by is participation. If you have 40% participation, that means that there's a handful of people carrying your entire company. And not only you have risks that those people walk and you're screwed, but that means that you don't have a good onboarding program, that you don't have a good repeatable process, and you need to work on that. I think a few quarters ago, my rep participation fell below 70%, and we all freaked out. So we went and took a look at the onboarding. We took a look at the enablement to make sure that every rep was delivering, again, the results, but they're delivering with excellence. And the things that I'm worried about now is the spam break. How many managers do I need per number of SDRs and AEs, right? So that each of them have the time to inspect, time to coach, and do it great. And then we're to a point in which our managers are becoming great and they're churning, meaning they're going to become director somewhere else. You need to plan for that, because if you're successful, that will happen. And not only will happen, but it's something you celebrate, because that means that you're running a good shop, and you should be proud of that. So you should plan for it. I wanted to close with, I have 3 minutes, so I'm going to close with something that is near to my heart. So I've seen a lot of people getting flamed on LinkedIn around being an SDR or getting reached out, and how annoying the whole thing is. And I want to take a stand on the side of the SDR. And then I pitched this to my all hands a few weeks ago, and that when you think about the way the world runs, right? This is a photo from Davos. This is Satya and Cheryl and Mahindra sort of solving big problems, right? Hunger, water, education, et cetera. These are the leaders of great companies that were built on the back of great products, but even better sales teams. Because the sales teams on those companies are the ones in charge of pushing the innovation out. They're bringing the innovation to customers. There's a building at Microsoft in Redmond just for sales operations. You imagine that for a minute. It's a 4-story building, it's huge, and it has nothing but sales operations, because Microsoft has an enormous sales team, and they're all very effective. They have 4 or 5 call centers in the US that are doing cold outbound. So those annoying reps are the ones that are helping Microsoft stay on top and deliver innovation. And that's what we all do here. This is our job. Our job is to bring the innovation out. The innovation cycle does not get funded if we don't do our job. And that's what we're here to do. And it's something you should celebrate. Thank you.